Is there something, you know, concerns me there? Because, you know, I look at that and say, okay, fair call, 100%, that would be fantastic. But we're up against so many budget constraints all the time. It just is what it is. I know it's a significant challenge. And, you know, I certainly wouldn't want to have to go to Governor Brown and make the case as to why we need an extra 300 people or whatever it might be, even how legitimate it is, because you know, his response will be, everybody asks for more money,
Sure.
and give me a break.
Sure.
Right? So is there a way, and look, I'd like to put more people on the payroll. I think it's a good thing, and I think your ideas are good. But do you have any ideas, if not now, you could submit them to us, of things that we might be able to do to be sensitive to the population? Because this is a big issue. I mean, I think it's a gigantic issue. You look at the rate at which we're growing older, the assumptions we made in government, it's across the board. It's a huge issue on the future of aging, completely a huge issue. The average, we're all going to live a lot longer, and all of these assumptions we made are different. So I don't know whether there are other examples, certainly that you might use through your websites, or other ways to educate or train that we can be creative and inventive and stuff. If you could help us in that regard, that would be fantastic. I'll follow up on it for you, but there's got to be a way we can do this where it's not as expensive and we don't get the pressure for the budget changes because we need the money for development disabled, or we need the money for foster kids, or something else. That's the nature of our job.
And that's one of the reasons one of our strongest recommendations is the font on the websites.
Yeah.
I think we underestimate that people will go to use online, and we, ARP, we're training people on technology, on how to go online, how to use the website. So the concern, the recommendation is really the graphics and making it user-friendly. So across the board, and if there is an opportunity where there is an ombudsman or some person that they can contact, and even if it's only in the complaint, or if you're not getting the information that you need, having at least that, you know, small core group of people who know what somebody can do.
I think your point about clear, simple, big fonts, you know, when we did the CalWorks program, what was it, Chairman Ehrman, it was a 43-page document or something they first gave us when we first started out, which ultimately we ended up with a postcard for people to sign up with. I mean, it's all that interface. We're going to talk about that in the next panel a little bit, but that interface is everything about what the paper looks like. You're right. All that stuff. It's critical, critical, critical.
So that
anything
is,
you have in that regard that can be helpful,
absolutely.
we'd sure like to have it.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much.
All right, thank you.
All right, Mr. CEO, all the way from Missouri. Appreciate you stepping out and coming here. I want to hear the straight ups.
Sure.
You don't have a contract with the DMV, and you can be more candid than the people that didn't show up because they're scared about impacting their business, which we all know is the truth.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it's my great pleasure to be here and to visit with you all. And look, the reason we're in this business that we started about 2 years ago, we're a cloud-based digital government and payments platform. And prior to this, I had a different business.
Can you explain that in English? What does that mean? Tell us.
Yeah. So we simplify government for citizens by partnering with
give us an example
good folks like this. Tag renewals, the DMV. Driver's license renewal, fishing licenses. So here's.
And what do you do? Let's look at a driver's license renewal. What do you do in your company that's more simple and better than what you've experienced here in California?
Well, I haven't experienced it here in California.
You've witnessed or observed.
Yeah, but I've certainly observed it, and I would start by saying, to your credit, you do a lot right, and the fact that you even having someone focused on performance probably puts you ahead of a lot of other peer agencies. As someone who spends a lot of time in state capitals, not everyone has, and across lots of different agencies, have people who just think about performance of the agency. So let me start with that. Secondly, it's mobilegov.com, mobilgov.com. Look, but we started this business because had been working in Fortune 500s, delivering similar solutions to some of the biggest brands on the planet all over the world. And a bit of a government geek and a tech geek and an entrepreneur, which is makes me really exciting. But I was sitting in the DMV in Missouri one afternoon because I couldn't conduct the transaction online. Just this recognition that this all needs to be simpler, and that the private sector has a role to play. And so we knew, look, this isn't. Let me back up. The customers moved, right? And you hit on it. So, over 2/3 of the people have smartphones now, right? Close to 70%. And more people now connect to the internet via that smartphone than they do from a desktop or a laptop. And when they do, they have a different set of expectations. In fact, as you said in your opening remarks, about 90% of that time is spent in an app. And if you peel that data back, it's not just about channel, meaning phone versus desktop or laptop. It's about the experience. And it's about personalization and the shift to personalization. Use banking as just a quick example so I'll talk less abstract, right? Bank of America saw more mobile app banking sessions last year than they saw online banking sessions. And in fact, the Fed published a paper 9 months ago talking about the number one reason people switch banks or choose a bank, the number one criteria is mobile check deposit. And it was really the last reason people went to the office. And so,
Can you give us a reference to that report?
sure, I'll send it to you.
Yeah, I wanna see
Yeah,
it.
of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, those are just, again, really exciting guy here reading reports out of the Fed. But look, the underlying premise is what I don't want as a consumer, and I don't mean just me, but I mean consumers don't want, or we have a different set of expectations now on how we do business with the brands we do business with, and the government certainly is a brand and a powerful, influential brand in our lives, right?
And is it fair to say that because this is what I'm interested in, even though government may be good at what they do, because the private sector has become so good at personalization, that in fact it's created this artificial gap where even though we're okay and people were happy, now they're not because their expectation is even a better level of service.
That's right.
So as this technology state, what we need to understand, all of our departments need to understand as we'll move forward in this modernization committee, is that it's not stable target. It's moving.
That's right. That's right. And I would say it's not just that technology has shifted, it's the underlying business models and partner models have shifted as well. And frankly, as we think about risk sharing, and you alluded to this, not in so many words, but today, too many private sector technology companies that didn't want to sit here today would walk in and say, hey, write us a $100 million check, and in 5 years, we'll deliver something modern, which by definition is impossible, right? But it, more importantly, we think it unfairly shifts the burden to the government to go away and build something, right?
How would you solve that problem? Because that's a big problem that we're facing. I won't take up too much time, but I'd love to get your insights on that.
Yeah, it's what we do. We solve this problem. So we think there's a role for these public-private partnerships. So we have a platform to deliver smarter government to the citizen, kind of on par with expectations in the consumer sector, because that's our experience.
Publicly traded company?
No, privately held, venture-backed. So we we provide a we would call it a sophisticated, high-end consumer-grade experience on top of an enterprise-grade secure platform. And we deliver these kind of rich, reimagined experience for the citizens and deliver this personalization fully integrated in the legacy system in the back office across the DMV and other services at no charge to the government. And then we make money on what
Advertising?
No, we don't advertise. No. That's a whole different conversation, but we don't, because we think this is important. We make money on transaction fees that are typically already in place.
Give me an example. What does that mean?
Oh, so for instance, in Missouri, if you did a 1-year tag renewal, citizen pays $3.50 either to that fee office or a third-party office, or there might be a convenience fee. They get called a lot of different things built into that online experience. And so not every place has them, but in a lot of places they do, or we add just a small fee. And so what we do is we make money. Our bet is, look, we can deliver the best, most personalized experience for the citizen and reimagine the way people do business with their government and simplify it, right? And we think it's powerful. Look, we're capitalists, and we're unashamed about that. And so we recognize if we're able to help people get out of the office, because that's how we think about things, the technology shouldn't just be applied to reduce a wait time in an office. You should never have to go to the office, right? And there's good technology.
But what do you do about the security of government information?
We protect it, and frankly, our platform delivers a level of security that typically exceeds.
Don't you have an ethical question of why this whole issue with cybersecurity, where private companies own government data?
We don't.
So we have access to it, though.
Oh, sure we do. Yeah, it's just like any other technology provider would, right? So we certainly, I mean, no different than we would working with a Fortune 500 company.
Just apologize, just real quickly, but I want to try to understand what you're saying. So under the current model of procurement and IT, the challenge that we have is it takes forever to go through the IT process. And then you got the loser who goes out and protests it, right? And you got government that adds on 75 things that they want to do, and it's so heavy that it's impossible to do, and then you get a zillion change orders. And so as a consequence, you have this problem. What you're saying is your model is you will say, we will do this, we will build it for you, and then just add a fee of 50 cents or whatever the charge is on the back end for people that want to access that. And that's what you're buying. You change the business model.
Yeah, and we're enabling technology. So we're a partner. So we would work with you and kind of walk in and say, hey, we've done tag renewals, let's say, in other places. So we've already built the platform. We'll configure it for your business rules, your codes, regs, so we can go quickly. Because you shouldn't have to go build it from scratch every time you deploy it. That's not how the private sector does these
Would you, without a
things.
contract, would you be willing, your company, let's just real quickly, because this is a really important question in terms of trying to figure out how we are going to modernize government. Because it is this point where the time a contract's done, the technology's obsolete.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And there's no dynamic attention to that. So the question becomes, would your company be willing to, because we have to compete with everything. We're government. We can't go and source anything. We got to go through the process and make sure it's transparent, okay? Of course. What do you think about a process where we went out and said, okay, you guys go and show us your platform, and we'll compare platforms. And then you put the money in and your risk is to win that contract. You got to build the platform instead of getting a contract and then build the platform on the back of government. And then if you win it, then we'll give you a fee of X for whatever it is, and you estimate that is and take that business risk and figure out what that is to make a living. And that way, if there's 5 companies that compete and your company or somebody else, whatever it is, wins that platform, we can turn it on immediately. You have a revenue stream and you take the risk. Does that process work for you?
That is our process.
Really?
That's what we do. We're here to partner. It's why we're sitting at the table, assuming some competitive risk by talking openly, but how else should it work?
Interesting.
That's what we did.
It doesn't work so well.
Right, but that's what we did with some of the biggest brands on the planet. We sat down with the key leaders and we talked about business problems and we brought innovative thinking. And I would just say, I would respectfully submit that I think there's too much. What do other states do? What do other jurisdictions do? You said it and we believe it. You should be looking to not each other so much, although that's an important part of it, but you should be looking at the private sector. What's banking do? What are the leaders in? Look, there were more, for the first time ever, more people shopped online on Black Friday than in stores, the first time ever, and that was led by mobile.
I know. And in China, it was on Single Dog Day at 11/11. Same thing, 16 billion.
And so what you shouldn't do anymore, and think about your experiences in some of the brands that you work with and any of us work with, and most of it's on device, right, is I don't go to it and start filling out forms. So we are biased towards platforms and being data-driven because it should just serve it to me, right? It should say, hey, John, it's 30 days to tag and renewal. Information the same, car on file done.
3 clicks.
Right.
That's what we do for folks.
Well, but there is, the only thing to just share with you, and I think it's important for the record, is, look, you're right, we shouldn't look to other governments because it's looking backwards in a sense, but you do need some level of a metric.
Of course,
at least, so we understand where we are. It shouldn't be the guiding post, but it's always good, because often there are some governments that are just kicking it out of the park.
Of course there are.
I was on the phone with Bloomberg yesterday, the innovation people in New York on some innovative stuff. There's some really interesting stuff, so it's good to just watch it.
Absolutely.
But similarly, to really understand what the customer cares about, which is what you guys should think at DMV, which is where they're getting the best experience. I mean, Amazon is staggeringly brilliant in terms of how few clicks they figured it out. I was talking, Sergey Brin's attitude is, if it takes an extra quarter of a second for a search, they have studies that people will move on, and because of what people feel like in terms of this deal, and the standards that we in government have to move to be able to give folks who are residents and citizens a level of confidence in our system. Yeah, no, it's interesting. Anything further? Yeah, I will get public comment. Anything further?
No,
Great.
but thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, public comment. I understand that we've got a legislator from Montana here. Thank you so very much, everybody. I really appreciate it. But can you follow up with some ideas and stuff to us? I'd like to follow up your list. The follow-up would be great, so we can take a look at it and stay on top of this. I think it's excellent, you guys. Thank you so much. Really good job. Really good job. Okay. John Brueggemann? Sir?
Thank you, Senator.
Welcome to the California legislature.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And it's a pleasure to be here today. For the record, John Brueggemann with Motor Vehicle Software Corporation. And yes, I used to be a state senator in Montana and chaired the Senate Transportation Committee. And so we dealt with, and I used to deal with all the IT procurement, used to come through the Appropriations Committee. I dealt with that. So when it comes to systems, things like this, I'm familiar. But in my current role, I'm Executive Vice President of Motor Vehicle Software Corporation. And as Stephanie mentioned, we're one of the business partners that work with the DMV here in California. And the Business Partner Automation Program typically deals with working with institutional players, auto dealers, fleet companies, financial institutions, insurance companies, folks like that, to move work digitally to DMV. And so talking very briefly about kind of some of our experience in California and what we can do, or some of our thoughts on how to improve things. Number one, I would say that we work with DMVs around the country, and I will say I can validate that, and we are a member of AMVA. California is one of the best.
AMVA's what?
The American Association of Motor Vehicle Administrators. So
Okay.
all the DMV heads from around the country.
Okay.
And I can say that California, having been out there for years, I've been in this industry for 15 years, is the leader, period.
But was it the leader?
I have to
During
say
a full
that
15 years, because 15 years ago, you
Yeah.
know, I know when Governor Davis was there and Steve Nissen was working in the
Yeah.
department and some of the other directors, they really did an unbelievable job in starting to move toward where they're going today, and certainly what you're doing today is very impressive.
I can say in the last, probably since 2010, really,
Yeah.
which is when I started spending more time.
Okay.
When you go to the conferences, everybody looks to California because California, I mean, number one, DMV, as you say, is the retail face of government, period.
Right.
And California has the biggest challenge when it comes to public service of anyone. You have, massive diversity, ESL communities, folks like this that you have to serve, and you want to do that seamlessly. Everybody looks to California to how they're doing with this. And so, and California is doing a good job. And number one, I would say, as they were talking about, having different channels, mobile, web, things like that, full service to work, to get people to government is absolutely critical. We're working right now with DMV. We actually have a pilot in place, and we're doing, at no charge to DMV, it's just something for the good of the order, for a mobile registration card. Now, and
It's a mobile registration card.
so your registration card on your mobile phone. Now, that being said, do we want to have a,
In other words, instead of going in when a police officer stops you and asks you for your driver's license and registration, sir, you can simply, just like you do with your airline ticket, when you go to the airlines, you just can show your registration. And I believe, don't we also have, didn't Assemblymember DeBobney pass a measure?
on digital driver's license? Yes,
Digital
sir.
driver's licenses. So literally, if I get pulled over by an officer, I can have based upon what you're saying, both my registration and my driver's license on my electronic device.
Exactly. Now, for us, nobody is ever going to know who MVSC is. We're a business-to-business company, things like this. But what we're doing is creating the technology so that, and testing it so the DMV can later utilize it, or more importantly, we'll talk about the second aspect of how you reach the customer. Number one, DMV, has good apps and should have even in better access to all their transactions on your mobile phone, right? Bring people to you in an easy way. But second, take the DMV to where people are. And that is, you already have, most people have a car payment, most people have insurance, things like this.
Thank you.
So let's put that digital registration card out there to make it available to GEICO. Make that renewal part of your insurance. Allow these companies to deliver those services and collect the revenue on behalf of the state in more innovative ways. So you don't have to bring everyone to the DMV. Take the DMV to them.
Kind of like what we do with AAA in a sense.
Exactly.
Right.
And exactly. And you see, like, DMV has kiosks in their field offices, but there aren't any kiosks out in the private
Well, I think
sector.
we just talked about that, and we're gonna see if we can follow up on that. I think it's a really good idea.
That's true. There are a couple key policy things that we have to discuss, I think, that have kept us and kept the industry from really aggressively going out with that market.
So what you're suggesting, we've got a couple of issues here. We've got folks that are driving without insurance, right? And so you've got, in order to get your license, right, you've got, one of the challenges I saw, I don't know if we fix this or not, was that someone has to get their insurance to get their registration, but then they only pay the first month and they stop paying. Is that still a problem?
No, because the registration would be canceled upon us receiving a notice that. the
Okay,
insurance-
so what you're saying is a further convenience.
Exactly.
When I go to my insurance company, they'll just automatically register my they'll automatically register my vehicle in that process.
Yeah. And then-
and if they make a small fee, let them make a small fee, but it certainly takes a burden off of government.
Right.
It makes it easier for the customer.
Put the DMV in the channels where people already are. So let's say you're leasing a vehicle. Why isn't, as part of your lease, why isn't your DMV fees included? Your sales tax is apportioned among your payments for your lease. Why aren't your DMV fees? And there are things like this that absolutely can happen, but I think that there are some policy hurdles that need to be overcome to really enable some of these channels.
Ms. Doherty, can we follow up also on the DMV as a couple of other follow-up items here? I'd like to, I don't know if you can give us some level of supplemental information on whether or not we can do this with private companies on insurance. And secondly, what I'd like to know, which really, it relates into the next panel, which we'll start in a moment, about the driver's license amnesty program. We've now learned that over the last 8 years, 4.2 million Californians lost their driver's licenses. So either they're not driving or they're driving illegally. Well, do we have any data that will, I mean, that's a lot of people. We have the folks with immigration status where you've signed up 500,000 folks, okay. But this is a much bigger population of people either driving or not having licenses. So if they're driving, how are they registering their vehicles? I guess they're driving somebody else's vehicles. Do you have any data on that you could share with us? I don't need the answer now, but I'd like to just get a supplement on that. That would be fantastic. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, sir. And we look forward to continuing the conversation.
Thank you so much, Mr. Senator. Any further, good seeing you. Any further public comment on the first panel? Anybody else? The first panel? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Waterman. Okay, second panel, case study, traffic amnesty implementation and processes. We've got a number of folks. Yeah, I've got the judge. Patrick Barrett from DMV, the Acting Deputy Director of Legislative Affairs. Corey Jasperson, thank you. Good seeing you, my friend I just saw back east. From the Judicial Council, we also have Judge Richard Feldstein, who's the Judicial Council, the Chair of the Executive Advisory Committee, to be helpful here. Mike Harold from the Western Center. Do we have enough chairs here? On Law and Poverty, the Legislative Advocate. And Darby Kernan, the California State Association of Counties, the Legislative Representative. It's very good. Who do we want to start with? Anybody? You guys have any thoughts? There's a lucky penny there, Mr. Harold. Okay, why don't we start with, we'll start with the DMV. Patrick, Mr. Barrett?
Well, maybe I could put a little bit more perspective on the number of drivers currently suspended for failure to appear or failure to pay.
Okay.
We conducted a file pass of our database in July, and what we found is that 612 drivers statewide, 612,000 drivers statewide were currently suspended for multiple FTAs or FTPs.
What's an FTA, FTP?
Failure to appear or failure to pay a fine. In addition, what we found is that...
So you're saying the numbers that Mr. Harold had in his report from the 4.2 million, that's a collective total, but that a lot of people corrected their licenses over time?
A collective total, and year to year, some
Year to year.
people may be overrepresented, being suspended and reinstated more than once during the year.
I see. Okay.
So that's a correct number, 612,000.
Okay.
In addition to that, we found that 753,000 individuals had outstanding FTA,
How many? 700 and what?
753,000.
Yeah.
And in addition, 555,000 had an outstanding FTP. So some of those same individuals may also be suffering a driver's license suspension currently also.
FTP, failure to appear, FTA, failure to appear, FTA, FTP is a failure to pay.
Correct.
Okay, go ahead.
So what the department has done as far as trying to advertise the traffic amnesty program, you are probably aware that in our vehicle registration notices, we're submitting a insert in multiple languages, advertising the program.
Isn't it something like 8 languages I hear?
8 or 9 languages,
That's
yes.
fantastic. Thank you.
And we send out about 2 million of these inserts each month. So we've sent out about 8 million so far since the amnesty program was implemented. We also have information out on our website advertising the program. And we submitted press releases on the program and received a lot of inquiries from the media, which we responded to about the program also.
Okay.
That's about all I have for DMV. Unless
Do you
have any
have,
questions.
we have the numbers, I think that, was it the Judicial Council provided us for LA County on this this, did you have the statewide numbers in terms of how many people have made inquiries? Like the first month was like 112,500 in LA County alone in terms of inquiries, if my memory serves me correctly from the data you gave us, Mike. Do you have any statewide data, or would Judicial Council have statewide data on that?
Senator Hertzberg, Corey Jasperson on behalf of the Judicial Council. We don't have statewide data. The first quarterly reports from the 58 courts and counties aren't due until the end of January. And so we should have, better statewide numbers at that point. We had shared the numbers with Los Angeles earlier.
Yeah.
Anecdotally, they were giving us some updates as the program rolled out. And you're correct. In LA, in the first month, they received 128,000 phone calls. 18,000 forms were filled out either online or submitted in paper. About 50,000 citations on those forms. So, on average, folks had 2-3 violations per application. And we understand that about 8,000 driver's license hold removals were transmitted to DMV. And then, of course, that doesn't mean that all 8,000 folks got their driver's license back, because they need to follow up themselves with DMV, and they may have a driver's license hold in another location. And so those were the numbers from Los Angeles.
In the first 30 days?
In the first 30 days.
Okay. All right, anything further from you, Mr. Barrett? Corey? Okay, so those numbers, do we have, so we've got the real thing. I don't think, do you have any data on how many hits on the website? Do you know what that looks like? Because it sounds to me that 2 million notices in 8 or 9 languages a month is a significant outreach and an impressive. And that's very, very good. We talked about that in the bill, but that's fantastic. And it seems like you're getting response. We'll know, I guess, at the end of January, and we'll keep following up on this to make sure we stay on top of it and it's working. And if it's not, to make whatever modifications we need to modify to correct the process and make it work better. What about this whole issue of multiple counties? Can someone talk to this issue? And I know that the Western Center was working on it, but tell me where we're at on that.
Sure. I think Senator, again, Corey Jasperson on behalf of the Judicial Council, we have been, round and round several times now with the advocates, with the legislative staff as part of the budget process, as well as with DMV. We've had some ongoing conversations since the amnesty program kicked off, which was a component of your legislation that was signed by the governor, SB 405.
Right.
And I don't think we've come up with a brilliant solution to the situation. From the court's perspective, an individual court or county it can only see what violations are on a person's record within that jurisdiction. So the court in Sacramento, they don't know what's going on in someone's driver's license in Los Angeles. And so the courts don't have all the information. DMV, of course, has the statewide driver's license database. And so trying to figure out.
Why is there such a delay at the DMV? If you have a database, and this is all done electronically, why is there such a significant delay? I'm told that there's a 3 months lag in getting the data when it's being delivered on an automatic real-time basis. What's the problem?
The problem is dealing with a legacy computer system that was built decades ago. So for the file pass that we did back in July to get a handle on what's the landscape today as far as FDA, FTP goes, it was a computer programming effort. It took a while to get the data gathered, and so it's not a very timely process. It's a little bit difficult in some regard. So it's an old legacy database, and pulling out data is a little difficult. We do have some reports that generate monthly, but this specific data, we had to do computer programming to gather it.
Senator Hertzberg? My name's Darby Kernan. I'm with the California State Association of Counties. So there's about 15 counties that run their own program or collaborate with the courts to do it. In each county or court, there are various fees that kind of add on local taxes or fees to that. So that also has a problem in trying to say that if you're in Ventura, Sacramento, Napa, the charges are going to be different. So you can't just come in and look in Sacramento and say, okay, well, I have these penalties here, so this should be the total fee. The systems don't talk to each other like that. However, some counties do work with multiple counties. So Shasta works with multiple counties. Ventura, I believe, works with multiple counties. And those counties where they already have the agreements, they are trying to do that, and they're trying to work, if those are the counties where the multiple fees have, the multiple violations or infractions have occurred, they're trying to work with that. But it's also a pilot, it's a 2-year program, so there's only so much, I guess, not investment that you can make in changing the legacy system DMV has, or trying to create a computer system that allows everybody to talk for a pilot, for a program that's only 2 months or 2 years in its length.
Well, while you're at this, real quickly, Mr. Earl, 1 second, while you're at this, you know, we put in the bill because, you know, whatever, it's one of these situations, we're trying to get support for bills and getting people off. We allowed you guys to charge a $50 administrative fee. And I know there's been some discussion. I'm just curious, do we get any progress, or do we have to change the law to allow a payment plan on that $50 fee? Because sometimes that could be a pretty big number. Do you have any progress on that discussion?
Well, I would like to just, yes, on that, and then multiple, and I think the Judicial Council also has some good information. You know, in the counties and the information we're getting back from the counties who are running this program, we're asking them, what are your best practices? What problems are you seeing? In some counties, they are waiving the $50 fee for the people who qualify for the 80% reduction.
are?
Yeah.
Do we know which ones those are?
I think San Francisco is one of them. I
Yeah,
think.
San
San
Francisco's
Francisco's paying for that from the Human Assistance Department is paying for those $50 fees for people who are low income.
right, that are in their work program. And then Los Angeles, that's an example where the county is running the collections program. So the Los Angeles Board of Supervisors made a decision just before the amnesty program kicked off that they would waive the $50
that's fantastic.
program fee for low-income folks.
But other things that are happening, so in certain counties, they're working with the probation department and parole to make sure that people who have that qualify but are being supervised by probation or parole are getting involved in the program. So you have other components of county government, state government working to make sure people who may have not known about this find out about it. We also have Santa Cruz, for example, who is going out and doing excessive outreach and trying to make sure that they get all of the people that qualify. And I even know a story from the CAO who was talking with someone who was trying to get them to go out and get some more information. We also have people expanding the program to misdemeanors. So we have Mendocino County, for example, who's looking at not only just for the people who qualify for the amnesty program, also looking at expanding it. But I want to point out this program is only a few months in.
That's right.
And as we've worked with DMV, CSAC has on a California ID program for inmates, any pilot program or any program that starts, it takes 3 to 4 to 6 months to really work out any kinks. So what we're doing at CSAC is trying to communicate constantly with our Judicial Council partners, our county partners through the California Recovery Officers Association, and we're trying to get the best practices out there. When Mike tells us about problems that he's hearing in certain counties, we reach out to those CAOs and those county offices. As an association, we can't tell them what to do, but we're trying to inform them and let them know that people are watching, that people should be trying their best to make this work and be effective, and remind you, I guess, the legislature that it takes some time to get these programs rolling in a succinct manner.
No question about it. No question about it. You know, but it's. I just want to put some fire under everybody's focus on this deal, so that these are people's lives that are affected. Mm-hmm. It's like when somebody loses their license, right? It's like telling a doctor, you got a traffic ticket, we're taking away your ability to practice medicine, or a lawyer, you're going to pick because it has that practical effect, right? And so the faster we can get this done, the better. We'll just stay on top of it. But one of the thoughts I'd like to do here, like, you mentioned about Los Angeles County. I didn't realize that, or Mendocino, and these other counties. I'd like to communicate with them, thank them for doing what they're doing, for getting ahead of the game, right? Mm-hmm. And try to send a message of priority of this process, because it's so impactful on people's lives. Even if there's only 753,000 people or failure to appear, 555,000 outstanding failure to pay, 612,000 driver's licenses. Those are a lot of Californians. And for the senator who was here earlier from Montana, that's just state population, you know?
Right.
So it's a big deal in terms of people's lives, and the more we can do and the faster we can do it, the better. And I want to turn, if I could, to Judicial Council, Your Honor, to Judge, because I think that going from the lessons we just learned from Ms. Doherty in terms of the DMV and what they were trying to do, and from Mr. Thompson, you know, a lot of this stuff boils down to the interface. And I took a look at your form, and I want to direct your attention to your form. It says it was revised 8/25/2015. It's called the Statewide Traffic Ticket Infractions Amnesty Program, October 1st, 2015 to March 31st, 2017. And if you have a copy, if you don't, we'll get one for you. But, you know, I want to go through the form in detail because, you know, as I always like to say, the great architect Mies van der Rohe, God's in the details. And as I look at this form, I can't understand half of what you're asking me. Now, maybe that's what we wrote in the law, and we got to fix it, but let's go through it. I mean, I start out at the top of your form, and it's like just the ability for me to, if I'm sitting there trying to fill out my name and address and all that stuff, there's no lines, there's no box. It's not, the whole idea of being larger and font friendly for seniors. It's just confusing. And I know it sounds simple, but life is about these simple things. The companies, when you look at these interfaces and why Bank of America is having more online experiences and all of these things, it boils down to this little stuff, right? And then if you go down, and again, if we have to change these in the law, but you've got a section here, that's my first comment. You can't, it's too small. You can't figure it out. Mobile work, I mean, it's just hard to read and figure out where you're supposed to put your stuff. I would have a clear box around the thing with clear lines about what you're supposed to do and make it really simple for someone to poke out. You know, my information, right? Super simple. If you look online at what folks do, this stuff looks like a government form that has no deal. And then it goes, you know, again, I think the truth of the matter is, in many of these things, people want their licenses back. They want to get their thing off their back, and they'll sign anything, right? But if you look at this with a lawyer's eye or a judge's eye, it says, I don't owe any restitution to a victim within the county where the violation occurred. Now, I know the governor's office added that to our measure, right? But, you know, the truth of the matter is it's hard for someone to know. And then the second question, I don't have any outstanding misdemeanor or felony warrants in the county where the violation occurred. Well, maybe your traffic ticket turned into a misdemeanor. Who knows? You don't know what it means. You don't know if you have something or not, right? I look at that, and it's like, that's intimidating to me. Now, if I want my license back, I'd sign it. Then you go down, it says here, and the next one says, I'm a person in good standing. What the heck does that mean? I mean, go to church? I'm a person in good standing. I'm supposed to sign that, and it says at the bottom of the page, under penalty of perjury. I'm sorry, right? Now, we lawyers, we can interpret what that means, but if I'm somebody who's trying to fill out a form, and I'm a responsible 82-year-old person who's trying to fix my problem, what does that mean? Am I not eligible for this? I don't even know where the language came from, and I'm not saying we didn't screw it up, because we may have required it in the law. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just suggesting when you look at this document, and this is what I've got to sign in order to do the amnesty program, this concerns me, because this is where the rubber meets the road. And I'd like to get your thoughts on. I've got some other questions, but, you know, this idea of, you guys use terms like a collecting entity. What the hell's a collecting entity? Now, as a lawyer, I probably could guess what those might be in 36 years, but, you know, I'm somebody who's a senior citizen. What's a collecting entity? I made no payments to this court or collecting entity. I don't know what that means. Again, I understand it's written by lawyers and judges, but we've got to turn this into something simple. So I'd love to, you know, I've kind of thrown you under the bus on that a little bit, but that's okay. I know you didn't write it, but I want to make the point, and I'd love to hear your thoughts.